Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will build a REST API with Node.JS, Typescript and MongoDB. We will build a simple API that will allow our users to create polls, fetch polls they've created, and other polls that other users have created, okay? It will also allow the owner of a poll to add options to an existing poll, and they will also be able to vote on their own poll or polls that other users have created. If you think this makes sense, please leave this video a like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can watch all of our videos in the future as they drop. This video is the second video in a two-part series. In the first video, we built a simple authentication API, and in case you missed that one, you can go ahead and watch it, and when you're done, you can come back onto this one. I have a hidden challenge for you at the end of this video to check your skill when working with MongoDB queries. So make sure you stick around till the end, okay? In this video, we'll work on the polls part of the back end. I will allow the user to be able to create a poll, fetch polls they've created, fetch polls other users have created, and finally to vote on a poll, just like I said. And once again, if you think this idea makes sense, leave this video a like. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so that other developers can find our channel and can also find this video. I would absolutely love to hear your comments on the video. What do you think about using TypeScript with Node.js and MongoDB, okay? So let's dive into what we have for today. Let's head back to the types.cs file where I will copy and paste in some interfaces. We have a poll option interface which has a text property which is a string, a votes property which is a number, and a percentage property which is also a number. Then there is another interface, poll. This has a question property which is a string, a creator property which is also a string, an options property which is an array of poll options, a total votes property which is a number. We are going to change this total votes property later, okay? A status property which is a narrowed string, an end date property which is a date, and we'll also change this later, and a voted property which is a boolean. I will make sure the poll interface extends the document interface, and then head back to the src/schema/poll/index.cs file to continue with the poll interface definition. I will strongly type the poll schema to be a schema of a poll type. Then I will ensure the poll schema has all the properties defined on the poll interface. I will change the total votes property from a number to an array of objects with a username property, just like as I told you. Then I will create a new file inside the services folder. This file will be named poll/index.cs. Inside this file, first we will import the poll schema and then head back to the types.cs file. Now, inside the types.cs file, I will define and export a poll model interface which serves to define functions for the poll model, okay? I will add a method on this poll interface that we have just created, okay? I will define a create poll function on the poll model. This method will accept a payload argument. The argument will have a question property which is a string, a creator property which is a string, an options argument which is an array of poll options, a status property which is a string, and an end date property which is a date type. This method will return a promise which resolves to a poll. We will add another method, get poll by ID. This accepts an ID argument which is a string. This promise will also resolve to a poll, okay? Then we'll define another function, get user polls, which accepts an argument user underscore ID, which is a string, and is going to return a promise that resolves to an array of polls. Then I will navigate to the services/poll/index.cs file, where I will chain a call to poll schema.statics.createPoll. This will be equal to an async function, and inside this function, we will create a variable existing user, which is equal to the result of importing and calling await user service.getUser by ID. We will accept an argument that matches the type for the payload for the create poll function. Then we'll use the payload.creator to find the user whose ID matches the creator variable, okay? I will pause with this function implementation and head over to the services/user/index.cs file, where I will implement this getUser by ID method by defining a method on the user schema.statics.getUser by ID. This will be equal to an async function which accepts a user underscore ID argument, which is a string. And inside of this function, I will write a query to find user based on their ID. And then I will head back to the services/poll/index.cs file. And if the existing user is not found, we are going to throw an error that user not found, okay? I return a call to this.create with the payload to create and return the poll from the function. I will head back to the types.ts file where I will add a getPolls method on the poll model. This method will return a promise that resolves to an array of polls. Then I will head back to the services/polls/index.ts file. Then I will head back to the services/polls/index.ts file where I will assign a function to the poll schema.static.getPollById method. This is an async function which accepts an argument poll_id, which is a string. I will use this poll_id to retrieve the poll whose _id property matches the poll_id argument, and then I'm going to return it from this function. I will assign another function to the poll schema.statics.getUserPolls. This is an async function which accepts a user_id argument, which is a string. We will use this user_id to find all the polls whose creator matches the user_id argument. Then I will assign a function to the poll schema.statics.getPolls method. This is an async function that returns all the polls that have been created in the database, and then I will create a new file inside the src/controller folder. This file will be named poll/index.ts. I will add the first controller function createPoll, which allows us to create a poll, and after that poll is successfully created, we are going to send it back to the client. I will add another controller function getPollById. This will fetch a poll by its ID, which can be obtained from the request params, and then I will send back the found poll to the client. I will add another function getPolls, which fetches and returns back the list of polls created in the database. I will add another controller function getUserPolls, which fetch all the polls that has been created by a particular user using their ID property, okay? And this can be extracted from the request params as user_id. After the polls they've created has been found, we are going to send it back to the client. I will navigate to the routes/index.ts file where I will register a post request to /poll while using the createPoll controller as the root handler function. I will register a get request to /poll/id, and I will pass the getPollById function as the root handler function. I will also register another get request to /poll while passing in the getPolls controller function as the root handler function. I will register another get request to /poll/userid while passing in the getUserPolls controller function as the root handler function, and then I will save and hit npm run dev from terminal to get our server up and running. I will navigate to the .http file where I will attempt to create a new poll. You will observe that we are not adding any options on the poll yet. Don't worry about that. We are going to handle adding of options later. You can see the newly created poll in the result tab. I will now try to fetch all polls which we retrieve successfully in the result tab. However, keep in mind that we have only created one poll, and that's why we are getting an array with one poll. Now let's try to fetch a poll by its ID. And you can see the poll we just created in the result tab, right? After which I will try to fetch all the polls a user have created. I can see that we get back an array of polls belonging to this particular user. I'll head back to the types.ts file where I'll add a method on the poll model, add option, which accepts an option argument, which is an array of poll options. This function will also accept a poll_id argument, which is a string, and it will return a promise that resolves to a poll. Then I will head to the services/poll/index.ts file where I will attempt to implement this add option on the poll schema. I will chain a call to the poll schema.statics.add option, and this will be equal to an async function which accepts two arguments: options, which is an array of poll options, a poll_id argument, which is a string. Inside the function, I will use the poll_id to retrieve the poll whose ID matches the poll_id. If the poll does not exist, then I will throw an error, poll not found. Then I will set the poll.options to be equal to an array where we will spread the option into the array. I will also spread all existing options on the poll into that array, okay? I will save and return the poll from this function. I will navigate to the controller/poll/index.ts file where I will add a new controller add option, which allows the user to add an option to an existing poll. I will extract the option from the request body while the poll_id argument will be extracted from the request params, both of which will be used to add an option to a poll and return the updated poll back to the client. Then I will head to the routes/index.cs file where I will register a patch request to poll/poll ID while passing in the add option controller function as the root handler for this request. Then I will head back to the .http file to test this at, and you can see that the poll returned back to us has been updated. We now have an array of options on the poll. Now we just have one feature left to implement, and as such, I will head to the types.cs file where I will add a new method on the poll model. I will define a vote method which accepts a user underscore ID argument, which is a string, and an option index, which is a number. This function will return a promise which results to a poll. Then I will head to the services/poll/index.cs file where I will assign an async function to the poll schema.statics.vote. This function will accept user underscore ID argument, which is a string, and an option index, which is a number. Inside the function, I will attempt to find a poll based on this ID, and I will pause first and head back to the types.cs file where I will update the vote method on the poll model to accept a poll underscore ID argument, which is a string. Let's head back to the services/poll/index.ts file. I will also add another argument on the function I assign to the poll schema.statics.vote. It will accept a poll underscore ID argument, which is a string. We will use this poll underscore ID argument to find the poll the user wants to vote on. And if that poll does not exist, then we are going to throw an error, poll not found. Then I will use the user underscore ID argument to find the user who wants to vote on the current poll. And if that user is not found, then I will throw an error, the user does not exist. Then I will attempt to find the option user wants to vote on. I will pause again first and head over to the types.ts file to change the option index argument to option, and its type will now be a string. Then I will head back to the services/poll/index.ts file to continue with the poll schema.statics.vote method. I will change the option index argument to option, and its type will now be a string. Then we will use the option to find the option on the poll whose text property matches the value of the option text. And now let's change the option argument to option text just to avoid any variable name collision. I will increase the vote count on the option by 1 and also increment the total votes on that poll by adding the username of the user currently voting to the total votes array. And then I'll calculate the percentage of votes this correct option has received. I will update the options array on the poll, then save and return the poll from the function. Then I will head back to the controller/poll/index.ts file where I will add a new controller function for voting. The option text will be extracted from the request body, while the user underscore ID and the poll underscore ID will be extracted from the request query object. I will use all of this to vote on the poll and then send the result back to the client. I will head back to the routes/index.ts file where I will register a patch request to /vote while passing the vote controller function as the root handler function. Then I will head over to the .http file to test this method out, and you can see the results returned to us that an option has been voted on. You can observe that the total votes array has been updated. The percentage of that option we voted on has also been updated. I would have implemented a means for fetching polls a particular user have voted on, but since I said I will leave you a challenge at the ending of the video, I'm going to let you figure that out, okay? So if you found this video useful, leave it a like, ensure you subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification to be notified of all of our featured videos as they drop. I would love to hear your comments about the video and your thoughts and experience on working with Typescript, Node.JS, and MongoDB, okay? Is there any ORM in particular you prefer using with MongoDB other than Mongoose? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'm going to see you in the next one.